1. 12 years ago. Dragon Realm, Cyprus. Avalon tried her best to shelter herself from the chill of the early morning's wind. She wrapped herself tighter with her cloak, knowing she only had another hour before she needed to be on the move again. It was only 3 days ago that she left the Black Rabbits. She would no longer be a tool for a cult of murderers, kidnappers, and torturers. She was once proud to wear the black and purple of that clan. Now, she was more content to simply be Avalon the Wanderer. 3 days ago, and it all seemed like only a minute had passed. Sparrowport was just beyond the forest's edge. She would charter a boat to Judeoheim and serve the rest of her life as a silent one.
A lifetime. That will be how long it will take to atone for my sins.
A mist of rain swept through the forest, numbing Avalon's skin. Her clothes were soaked and musty from last night's rain. She knew it would be foolish to create a campfire with the Silent Master sending rabbits to track her down. A glowing coal could be seen with ease at night, and smoke would make it even easier. A warm fire was a luxury she could not afford. Avalon's ears twitched, and her sagging eyes sharpened. She was no longer alone. Snatching her sword that rested against the tree, she rolled forward to the center of the camp and focused her already alerted senses.
Who did the Silent Master send? You are foolish to think you can sneak up on the high blade of the Black Rabbits.
Avalon spat, keeping a vigilant eye in all directions. Finally, from the shadows of the woods, came a slender figure. With a sword already drawn, she slowly approached Avalon.
The Silent Master didn't send me, sister. I volunteered to hunt you down.
Avalon leapt backwards and unsheathed her sword. Her hilt trembled within her hands. Her heartbeat picked up its pace as she saw the murder in her blade sister's eyes.
How has it come to this? My sister, my lifelong friend. Now, my enemy?
Veda, it's not too late to leave with me, blade sister, Avalon sputtered. Veda dropped her hood and swished her sword back and forth. Each swing inched Avalon backwards.
How could you leave our home? How could you leave me? After all we've been through, you could just do that?
Avalon clenched her teeth and gripped her hilt with both hands, inching backwards.
The Silent Master, the Black Rabbits, they are both poisonous. Venom which withers our very minds so we can hurt the innocent. Now this? Your master wants to turn us against each other. Veda, you and I share something that he can never touch. Enough of your lies, Avalon. I swore to the Silent Master I would bring you to justice. Alana be my witness. You will come back kicking and screaming or dead. It does not matter which to me.
Veda dashed forward, and within seconds she crossed the camp and slashed at her blade sister. Avalon deflected the attack, but was unable to find the mindset to fight back. She was betrayed and confused that her best friend was so dead set in murdering her. Every thought in her mind told her to run, while her body wished to fight. Taking advantage of Avalon's momentary weakness, Veda kicked the outside of Avalon's knee, buckling her to the ground and slicing down at her in a heavy cleave. Avalon raised her sword to block. Veda's blow glanced off with such force that Avalon's sword tore from her hand and whipped through the air, driving into a neighboring tree.
I expected more fight from you, Avalon,
Veda sneered, grabbing Avalon by the throat, raising her closer to her.
I can't fight you,
Avalon whispered. She slowly edged her hand to Veda's belt and rummaged through one of her pouches. Veda slammed her prey against the tree, caressing her blade against Avalon's cheek. She smiled fondly as it grazed over an old scar.
Do you remember our sparring sessions?
Avalon tilted her head away from the sword's pricking edge.
You and I danced, better than anyone, even better than Legion and Malady. We were perfect for each other, continued Veda. We still are, Avalon said meekly. She grasped what she was looking for in Veda's pouch. I don't want to kill you, Avalon. You forced my hand. I can't come back a failure. A tear streaked down Avalon's cheek and over Veda's blade. I know, and I'm sorry, Avalon said before breaking free of Veda's hold and slinging a handful of white powder into Veda's unsuspecting face. Avalon went straight for her weapon while Veda howled furiously in the background. However, the sword was lodged too tightly into the trunk. Gripping with 2 hands and a foot pressed against the tree, she growled while tugging on the handle, but it would not budge. She took a moment to watch Veda frantically search for a way to wash away the blinding powder, before sprinting off to Sparrowport. The gates of Sparrowport were already crowded with traders and travelers attempting to enter the city. The White Cloak guards inspected and questioned every traveler coming into the port city, looking for contraband or possible Black Rabbit criminals. Avalon hid within the crowds, being sure to keep her Black Rabbit garbs hiding within the shadows of her cloak. Waiting patiently for one of the guards to become overwhelmed with peasants and merchants pushing their way to the entrance, Avalon slithered around the guards and slipped her way into the city. Sparrowport itself was built in the valley of hills spilling out into the ocean. Despite all the roads directing to the bay, there was a maze of weaving streets, alleyways, and bridges connecting the layers of buildings. It was all too easy to hide within the masses of the people moving about their daily routine. But hiding was not the only thing on her mind right now. Her fight with Veda was unexpected, and with that came the loss of her weapon. She needed to replace it and find her way onto a boat going to Dragon Realm Blight before Veda recovered and found her again. Making her way into a stretch of streets that served as a bazaar, she found herself caught off guard by the allure of the many exotic vendors. Fruits from the abyss, furs from Stratus. Sparrowport seemed to have it all, even swords. Spread out on a blanket, Avalon knelt down to inspect a line of finely crafted steel weaponry. She hovered her hand over the glinting sheen of a scimitar, and then brushed the smoothness of a long shamshir. Both swords were from the deserts of Scorch. Although she was curious how they might handle, they were not what she was trained in. The vendor tending to the stall flashed a keen smile and moved his long beaded hair over his shoulders. Adjusting his turban, he spoke in a silky voice. "Ah, fair maiden that has fine tastes. This shamshir was forged in the free hands of Alva and brought over the ocean to grace your hands alone." He ended with a smirk and a wink. "I'm looking for an elven shadowblade," Avalon said, ignoring his flirtatious efforts. "Ah, yes, the Ninjato. That is an interesting sword. They say that the Leaf Song developed the blade after receiving the teachings of a Yikati. It is why the Ninjato is favored by assassins and appears so foreign compared to the claymore or longsword of the Dragon Realm Cypress." "Thank you for the history lesson. Do you have one?" Avalon huffed, tapping her foot. "Patience, child. Of course I have one. However, as one knows, Long Whisper is at war with Black Rabbits. Trading a Ninjato to someone dressed in their colors is hazardous to my well-being," grinned the vendor. Avalon darted her eyes, looking for signs of patrolling White Cloaks. "Relax. I shall sell you your shadow blade, as well as a set of robes. The blade isn't illegal, but being a rabbit is." 50 trit, my friend," the vendor chuckled. Avalon counted the coin on her. She had only 75 trit, and was unsure how much passage to Blight would still be. However, if a vendor could see she was a Black Rabbit, it was only a matter of time a White Cloak may find her, or worse, Veda. "Very well. Here, take it." The towering white sails were a sight to see as the salty air tickled her nose. The creak of the barnacle-covered hulls cut through the mantra of working seamen. She had never been so far south in Long Whisper, and although she had seen the sea, she had never experienced boats as large as these. Approaching a dockmaster from a smaller merchant ship, Avalon held out what she estimated would be enough to get to her chosen realm. She raised her chin and swelled her chest. She may have been a skillful assassin, but she was clueless in the ways of the barter. The best she could do was entice what seemed like a worthy deal. The dockmaster glared at her open hand. "What is this?" Avalon's face dropped as her best-laid plan seemed to collapse from underneath her. She straightened her face, hoping to salvage her deal. "I need passage to Blight. 15 is what I'm offering." The sailor snorted and spat out a wad of mucus. He seemed to mull it over as he scratched his rough beard. He then held up his hand, spreading his fingers. 50, and we're leaving in 10 minutes. Avalon blinked at the price. "I still need to eat. 15 is a fair price," she said, reaffirming her offer. 15'll get you to Scorch. Scorch would only get me halfway there. I would be stranded in the desert realm, she said, raising her voice. 15'll get you to Scorch, he repeated, now crossing his arms. Avalon turned her head back toward the Sparrow's Port gates. Veda would be in the city by now and heading to the docks. A trip to Scorch was not the ideal realm for her journey to becoming a silent one, but it would throw Veda off her trail. Perhaps the Angel of Luck was with her today. Deal. Heading onto the ship, she paused for a moment, reflecting on her past life that she was about to leave behind, and readied herself for the adventure to come. 2. Present day. Dragon Realm, Cyprus. The old ruins abbey chimed across the city as dawn splintered the horizon. Long ago, the priests of the Blue Angel walked the hallowed halls. Now, new priests of a different deity graced the grounds, and with them came the Silent Ones, an ancient order of knights serving the Mortal One. The angel with the red wings, Judeo. Avalon led her Silent Ones of the abbey. Once a deviant assassin serving the death goddess, she and her old blade sister had long since sworn their blades to Judeo's order. Avalon sat up in the straw-stuffed bed and stretched out her stiff muscles from a hard night of routine training between her and Veda. She twisted her neck, unleashing a ripple of cracks before swinging her jaw from side to side. A pop reminded her that her blade sister had gotten in her share of strikes before Avalon finished her off in their friendly sparring. She gently grazed the bruise underneath her eye and winced, but with a smile. "You don't need to be so aggressive, sister," she called to the neighboring room. "I think you nearly killed me last night." "Is it morning already?" A low voice strained from the exhausted Veda. "Time to get up, Veda. You can't lie lazily all day," teased Avalon. Veda wrestled around her covers as she smothered her face in her pillow. "The others get to sleep in for another 3 hours. Why can't I? I'm first blade, aren't I? Surely that comes with its perks." Avalon crept into her blade sister's room, grinning ruefully as she snatched away Veda's blanket. A rush of cold air sent shivers through Veda's body. She instinctively curled up, tightening her grip on her pillow. Avalon shook her head disapprovingly and smirked. She pitied her blade sister. She had only been in the Order for 3 years, while Avalon had been in the Order for 5. Already the ways of the Silent Ones were eroding away Veda's black rabbit past, but she clung onto its customs and morals unconsciously. "Veda, you are an iron wing, not a first blade," Avalon chided. "Now get up. You want perks? How about the fact that you no longer have to mop the floors or dust the pews?" "I've been a Silent One long enough. When will I get a vacation? I want to be assigned to a hot spring or a tropical beach or anything other than this depressing church." Avalon sat on the side of her bed and lifted the clutched pillow to reveal the pouting face of Veda. "No one said this life would be easy, but at least you have me." Veda cracked a smile. "You think that's good enough?" Avalon did her best to look angry, but blurted out with laughter. She stood and swatted her friend with the pillow. "It'll have to do. Now get up." With the sun still rising, breakfast was being served in the dining hall of the Newly. Portraits of the former high priests of ruin still hung on the walls.
Their stern eyes made even the most steadfast Silent One shudder. No windows washed the stale air out, or let natural sunlight to perk up the stuffy room. Instead, an old iron chandelier accented the already gloomy atmosphere of the hall, providing the only light source. The young Silent Ones stood motionless at a long dining table. Instead of their traditional long white coats, they wore canvas-colored linen tunics and trousers, marked by rank with sashes of various colors. White for the lowest, next dark gray, orange above that, followed by silver, which only Avalon wore. There were no gold sashes in the hall, and red was reserved for the commander of the order only. The Silent Ones began to fidget in hunger, waiting for Avalon to give them the signal to eat. Their simmering bowls of porridge filled their noses with a delightful aroma of sweet cinnamon and honey. Sticky cinnamon buns glazed with melted sugar rested on the table alongside plump, sizzling, spicy pork sausages. Irresistible to the hard-working men and women of the Abbey, but untouchable until Avalon picked up her fork first. Finally, Avalon nodded to her followers. At once, chairs scraped across the stone floor, and a whirlwind of hungry Silent Ones dug into their long-awaited meal. Avalon barely touched her food when the double doors to the dining hall crashed open, and a pair of priests ran to either side of her, distress scarred on their faces, eyes wide with concern. Veda furrowed her brow in confusion as a priest whispered into Avalon's ear. Avalon slowly pushed back her chair to leave, not wanting to cause any alarm in the hall.
Veda, with me. The rest of you, finish your meals, she said, addressing the table.
Resting in the pews of the connected chapel sat long whisper soldiers, their faces wrought with horror and exhaustion. The commanding officer of the squad popped to his feet at the sight of Avalon and Veda. Avalon bowed to the captain as she snapped a salute.
You are part of Coda's range patrol. Judging by the eyes of your men, I suspect you have come across something of interest.
The captain shifted his gaze back to his men before responding, Aye, ma'am. We are from the 2nd Range Patrol Unit. He swallowed hard before delving into his report. We were patrolling west of the city, 3 days' march from here. I sent my ARO soldier up ahead at the border of a thicket, looking for bandits and whatnot, but he found something far more menacing. Avalon looked past the captain looking for the scout, but could not find him. She smirked, looking into the rafters, and found the ARO soldier perched on a crossbeam.
You, lad, come down here.
The young elf dropped down silently and cautiously approached Avalon.
Private Marvin Embercloud, ma'am, he said.
Avalon nodded in acknowledgement.
Tell me what you saw in that forest.
The forest was caked with ash, as if there was a nearby fire blazing, but there was no smoke, no smell of any sort of fire.
I won't forget the silence. Not a single chirping bird, no scurrying of squirrels, nothing, ma'am.
He swallowed hard and adjusted his belt.
I explored further and found that the trees were being choked by an alien substance. I can't describe it, but I'll try. Like worms, slimy and soft, wrapping around the trunk, spreading across the bark. It numbed my fingertips upon touching it.
His hand shivered as he continued his story.
I knew there was a nearby village, so I rushed back to my patrol to report my findings.
Avalon knew the village as well. Woad Hollow. The captain dismissed Mariv and continued. Ma'am, Woad Hollow is located past the forest. We trekked through the Dollhammer Forsaken Forest. Only the Tom One could call such a darkness upon the soil. He shuddered. The forest was haunting, and Woad Hollow was frightening. The ground was bubbling black, much like tar. The outlining homes were covered in what Mariv described. Veins of some sort. We didn't enter the village. We figured this was the work of the night. Demon, perhaps vampire. We came here first, ma'am, he finished. Avalon was now locked in a hypnotic gaze. With each descriptive mention about Woad Hollow, she fell further into the depths of her mind. Veda placed a gentle hand on her shoulder.
Avalon?
Avalon refocused her attention.
Captain, I will make this my priority to look into the goings-on of Woad Hollow. Indeed, this sounds like the work of the night.
She turned to her blade sister.
Gather the Silent Ones and 3 priests. We head west at noon. Woad Hollow. My past has finally found me. Avalon sat lotus-style in her meditation chambers. Candles flickered around her, and her silencer rested across her lap. Sweat dripped from her chin as she struggled with her past sins. She clenched her jaw and furrowed her brow. Bowing her head, she whispered a prayer to herself. Judeo, I won't give in. I won't surrender. I've ran all my life. I won't run anymore. I'm not afraid of the ashes. Grant me your silencer, from which all others are born, and give me wings so white. A prayer of comfort. It gave her courage to face her challenges. She raised her head, now calm, now in serenity. Looking to a tapestry hanging on the wall, she nodded. The embroidered canvas invoked the graceful Judeo and her angels battling the demonic forces of the Black Moon. If Judeo could shine with eternal bravery, then so could Avalon have a fraction of that to head back to Woad Hollow. She snapped her head to the sound of approaching footsteps, followed by a knock on her chamber door. Enter. A graying man, dressed in a red habit with a gold trim, pushed open the door. His skin was dark, and his tightly curled hair only grew around his bald head. Avalon, I have heard word around the Abbey that you are heading on a mission to the west. I am, Goldwing Andros. And you are aware I am here to observe your leadership, Andros said. He'd raised his voice ever so slightly. Avalon knew where this was going. My Goldwing, the mission to Woad Hollow will be very dangerous. I don't want you abroad, for I fear for your safety, Avalon explained. You are a clerk in Judeoheim, hardly battle-hardened. Andros narrowed his eyes, entering the chamber. I am a silent one, just the same as you. I carry a silencer across my back. I trained at the Blade Range as a recruit just like every other recruit. I can handle myself. As you say, my Goldwing, Avalon bowed. I will have your horse readied. Andros bowed back. Very well, Silverwing. I look forward to seeing your unorthodox methods in action. 3. Dragon Realm Scorch. 3 men sat around a crackling campfire as a skinless skewered jackrabbit slowly roasted over the fire. A cool wind swept through the Badlands, chilling them through their silky garbs. The third man shivered, jingling his heavy iron chains and shackles. Vroke stirred the campfire, watching glowing embers dance in the night like fireflies. Sometimes I wonder where the damn heat goes when night falls. He rotated the rabbit to inspect his handiwork. The Badlands wouldn't be so bad if it stayed at this temperature during the day. Briz threw up his hood. Pay attention to the food and less about the weather. You're going to burn it. Briz, brother, let me do the cooking. All you have to do is eat it, and here you are complaining already. Vroke huffed. Briz looked at the third man, who was dressed in a ragged kilt and drab gray tunic. A canvas bag was masked over his face. Briz inspected the collar for any sores before responding back to his partner. Well, hurry up. We'd have this one returned by the time you finished. You wouldn't be so hungry if you didn't eat all your victuals this morning, said Vroke. Can you blame me? Briz was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a stranger bumbling into their campsite. His skin was pale for someone in Scorch, unlike the 2 men native to the Dragon Realm. Dark red hair peeked under his derby hat. As well, his goatee and light scars made up his rugged features. His long duster swept back and forth, catching on the rustling thorn brush as their unexpected guest kicked aside a tumbleweed before plopping down on one of the large stones that were scattered around the camp. I've been walking these parts for a bit. He scratched the side of his face, now eyeing the charred rabbit over the fire. I'm pretty lost and hungry. You folks wouldn't happen to be in the mood to trade some of your food for good company tonight, would you? His accent was crude and not easy to understand, as if he spent his life in some backwoods swamp. The 2 men caught the glint reflecting off several rows of daggers fastened in the stranger's coat. He caught their roaming eyes and chuckled. Right, those daggers aren't for you boys. Here, let me take out this coat. It may be a bit chilly this night, but your blazing fire will do the trick. The man dropped his coat in a heap to his side before continuing. Name's Guster. What names you fellas go by? Briz warmed up a bit more to Guster once he disarmed himself. He seemed friendly and his bayou charm was curious and endearing to him. After weeks in the Durin Badlands, Guster was a welcome distraction. I'm Briz and this is my partner Vroke. Welcome, brother. Vroke nodded politely to Guster, took out a serrated dagger, and sawed off a haunch of the cooked meat before tossing it across the fire to the eager hands of their new guest. Guster savagely tore into the tough, dark meat. I'm new to these badlands, he said between mouthfuls, specks of rabbit meat spit out of his mouth. I can see why they are so bad. Just an empty strip of land covered head to toe with the rattlesnakes and sand vipers. My lizard cow of a bullgrin stirred up some trouble and went and got bit by one of them diamondback bastards. He picked at a bit of meat wedged in his teeth with his finger. I've been looking for help, wandering like a headless chicken before I saw your campfire. Any of you two have an antidote for snake venom? My friend, you can't go trekking through these lands without antidotes. We can spare a vial or two for you, Briz said as he rummaged his hand through a linen satchel. You were lucky we were here, else you'd be a dead man. Guster nodded, sucking the oily grease off the leg bone. Aye, old Guster is quite the unprepared fool. Y'all are lifesavers. He tossed the bone over his shoulder and licked his fingers clean before pointing at Briz and Vroke's prisoner. Hey, what's the story with that one? Is he someone important? Vroke walked over and smacked the back of the prisoner's head. An escaped slave. We are bringing him back to his master. Guster cocked his head in a curious manner, examining the exposed, large and toned muscle of the prisoner's arms, both brimming with shapes of old scars. He is a bit fit for just some servant. Is he a gladiator? Guster prodded. Right you are, brother. This is Traylon Vey, Briz said, swelling with pride for his prisoner. Guster's eyes widened in awe. Traylon Vey? That one's pretty famous in the arena. He killed many men, worth a bigger purse than 30 lesser gladiators put together. Guster squinted his eyes and shifted his face to a slanted frown. Y'all aren't pulling my leg, are you? He is the real deal, brother, Briz asserted. I don't believe you. Briz chuckled and lifted the sack off the gladiator's head to reveal an olive-skinned elf. He bore wild blue-dyed hair and twin green feather tattoos under his eyes, the signature appearance of Traylon Vey. Guster nodded and stood up nonchalantly, draping his coat back on. He stretched his back, removed his derby hat, and bowed to his hosts. Old Guster needs to thank you for doing the legwork, but I'll be taking Trey off your hands now. Briz and Vroke raised an eyebrow in confusion. Vroke moved around the fire and approached Guster. Say that again? With a flurry of movements, Guster tossed Vroke his hat before bowling him over with a stiff kick to the chest. Briz attempted to rise to his feet, fumbling for his scimitar in a panic. A whirling dagger twirled through the air and lodged deep into his forehead. Vroke crawled backwards, kicking sand with each motion. A sick crunch shattered the night air as Guster stomped on his ankle. Vroke hollered in pain, clenching his teeth as he desperately formed his words. Queen Yilin Isana paid the network double the Sendati, so no competing slave master could hire a bounty hunter for this one. Guster applied more pressure on the fractured ankle as he leaned over. Is that so? Vroke wrenched and squirmed under Guster's weight, but nodded furiously. Turn in that slave to anyone other than our queen, and the network will know. Guster cracked a ruthless smile before drawing out a dagger. I'll take my chances, he said, driving his knife into the skull of Vroke. Retrieving his hat and daggers, the bounty hunter made his way to his prize. Traylon Vey had only made it a short distance during the skirmish, due to the heavy shackles bound to his wrists and ankles. Guster growled under his breath, taking off in a dead sprint before tackling his bounty. Give me my freedom, or at least give me the chance to fight you for it,
The mist elf wrestled beneath Guster. You want to rumble with me? Guster rocked the elf's head sideways with a hefty punch. I just killed 2 men without breaking a sweat. Your Borgin will be dead by now, Traylem Vey spat. My master will have your head on a spear by sunrise. I can't be worth it. My lizard cow hasn't been bit by a rattler. That was just a lie to get cozy with those fools. Guster threw another jab. And my employer would love to see the face of Asana when she loses her favorite slave. The prisoner grew silent, knowing now his chance at freedom had passed. Let's get going. We have a long ride back to Rashir. The bounty hunter huffed as he tugged on the chain attached to Traylem Vey's collar. Guster paused to pick up a bottle from Brizz's satchel and snatched the rest of the cooked jackrabbit. A little dry, he commented, looking over the carcass. But we'll make some fine company with this whiskey. 4. Dragon Realm, Cyprus. The twilight mists rolled over the streets of Dagger Row's shadows as Long Whisper's anti-rogue ops silently materialized. The band of humans and elves slowly drew their daggers and swords as they adjusted their crimson-red cloaks, waiting for the signal to raid the vile goat. They had been briefed that the tavern served as a front for a group of domestic terrorists planning to overthrow King Koda. Each young operative itched with anticipation as they tightened sweaty grips on their blades' hilts. Long Whisper never truly recovered after its participation in the war against Justinia. Although some chose to forget and move on, hundreds of veterans looked towards the leadership of their king for comfort, but the inexperience of the Mage King left them in perpetual disappointment. Wicker hid between 2 crates in the alley. Sitting against the brick wall, he clenched his quivering fist and grunted through short breaths. I can do this. I can do this. I've led missions at least 100 times before, some more dangerous than this. He held his eyes shut and chattered his teeth to persevere through the dread and doubt. Then why does it get harder each time? He whispered. He looked up and found his sergeant, Ellicard, hovering above him. I'll be ready in a moment, Ellicard. Ellicard looked up to the clear night sky. Nerves again? Wicker rubbed his shoulders to calm his body. The dreams get worse every night. It's like I'm back there, in the forest of the splintered skies. Ellicard stayed silent. He brushed his forehead before adding to the conversation. I think we all lost a part of our soul back there. I know I have. How do you push on? Will it ever get better? The elf leant out his hand to help Wicker to his feet. He patted his captain on the back. You just do. Soldier on, Wicker. Wicker clenched his fist once more. He waited for the shaking to reside before giving the signal for the raid to begin. Crashing doors and shattering windows rang through the vile goat as 20 ARO members rushed through every possible entrance of the tavern. Both the ground floor and the second floor flooded with red cloaks rounding up and arresting the opposition inside. Wicker and Ellicard approached from the rear, stepping around overturned tables and scattered chairs. The surprise invasion left little conflict for the terrorists inside the pub. Their meeting was quickly dismantled from the superiorly trained anti-rogue ops. The Watchers shackled their prisoners and kicked the back of their legs, buckling them to their knees. The cries of the men and women rattled through the tavern. We Reckoners won't be silent any longer. The king is forgotten. Now he must fall. Hollow be the crown that belongs to a coward. Wicker shook his head, not out of disgust or disbelief, but from the sympathy he had for these wayward citizens. They were veterans of the Varus War, like himself, soldiers that signed on to defend their home and came back maimed and broken. Some had lost their farms, not able to maintain the harvest after being drafted, while others lost work from wartime injuries. Although Wicker's king promised them compensation, he did not deliver. It was only a matter of time before these soldiers would rise against the throne. A group of his soldiers crowded around a defiant veteran. One of the Watchers slapped him across the face with a hefty backhand before spitting in his eye. Traitorous scum! May you be buried separate from your head, forced to walk the roaming plain a freak. The veteran was young, but his eyes were worn. He had seen his share of horrors already.
"You call yourself a soldier, Watcher?" he hissed. "Aye, the arrow of long whispers prove themselves. They cut their teeth in the forest of the splintered skies. But what have you done?"
He lifted his chin and puffed out his chest.
"You ride on the coattails of true heroes. I've seen Alana's hand. I felt the cold chill of her angels. I spent a day collapsed in the mud. 3 arrows in my back, 1 in my leg."
His voice grew louder, which riled the chants of his peers again.
"You know nothing of sacrifice. You're just another leashed dog for the king."
"Take that back," shouted the ARO private. He struck down the prisoner once more. The young man sucked in his busted lip and ignored the bruise forming on his cheek. He closed his eyes and sang an excerpt of an old Varisian dirge. "Angels swirl around me, waiting for my last breath. Eyes soulless and black, white wings like ash. I fear many things, but today I just fear death." We all know that song, but only until that day I laid in the mud did I understand the true emotion behind it, he finished. The Watcher sneered at the poignant words and pulled back his fist to further punish the steely-eyed prisoner. "Enough, Private," Wicker barked as he came between the veteran and his tormentor. "They are kin, our brothers, lost and neglected by the very country we all served. They don't deserve to be seen as enemies, but to be listened to." He knelt down, so he was eye level with the former scout. "What is your name?" "Netchels Gray. I was a private, proud of my rank," he responded. "Please, tell me your story, Private," asked Wicker. The Watchers around him jeered and shook their heads, but he ignored them. "I was discharged because of my injuries, like a lot of us. I lost my rank, respect, and my home. My leg was too weak to keep a job. I was on the streets a year after the war ended." Netchels lowered his head and grew quieter. "Coda turned his back on those that won him the war. Understand this, Watcher. What choice does a broken man have but to fight back?" Wicker lingered hard on Netchels' words. He knew the same day was bound to arrive at his doorstep when he, too, became too scarred or old to continue to fight. Perhaps his will would break before his body did, but he knew the day would come. He knew all too well that the life he led was dangerous. Wicker turned away, but strengthened his resolve enough to respond. "None. Then you understand why we have taken our stance." Wicker rose to his feet, his face stern but solemn. "But you still have taken arms against the king I have sworn to protect and serve, and I must fight my enemies. Foreign." The veteran lowered his head in gloom, knowing the final words to come. "And domestic," he whispered. "We are the many, and came home misused. We may be the forgotten, but we will not stand abused." The prisoner's chant shook the floorboards of the tavern as the Watchers marched them down the streets. Wicker took the bold words to heart. "May your words never fall on deaf ears." 5. Dragon Realm Cyprus. The noon sun locked into place over the marching Silent Ones on the 3rd day. 20 hand-selected by Veda, a mixture of veteran and still some green made up the platoon, as well as the 3 priests for divine support. Each was trained to battle the creatures of the night. Some have slain Lycan and the lesser vampire. None were prepared for what was laid in Veda's report. An entire village swallowed by smokeless ash, slithering vines choking trees. Horrors, but it came with the territory of a Silent One, warriors ordained by the Red Angel. Avalon drifted further away in a daze, attempting to escape Woad Hollow and the problems that it would bring. A past she once ran from, a past she wanted never to return to, a past she could never return to, and yet, here she was. Her horse's rein slipped from her grip ever so slightly as Veda chatted on. Avalon lazily nodded, only half listening to her blade sister. The other half of her attention remained on the mission at hand. Their journey grew closer with every step. A 3-day trip that already felt like an eternity. Avalon lifted her head and adjusted herself within the uncomfortable saddle. She glanced at Veda with a blank stare, who only answered back with a stink eye.
"Forgive me, what were you saying, Blade Sister?"
asked Avalon. She tried hard to dodge Veda's scolding gaze.
"I was saying that you need to talk to him. Avalon, you know as well as I that an observer from Judeoheim could halt everything we've accomplished here."
Avalon nodded in agreement, but left it at that. She responded no further, nor attempted to signal for the observer to ride up to them. Veda glowered until Avalon finally broke.
Fine. I'll talk to him." "Why are you avoiding this? He outranks us and could shut us down in a single quill stroke."
Veda trailed off, weighing in on such power. She squirmed on her horse, passing a meek smile to Avalon.
"Come now, he's still just a man. He's no silent master. Now that was a phantom to fear."
"The silent master is dead. Elikard made the final blow himself. This Andros, he is still alive and well, and can end us on a whim," quipped Avalon. She slid her index finger across her throat and made a croaking sound, topped off with her eyes rolling back into her head. Veda giggled, but quickly sucked in a breath as the sound of scrolls, quills, and bottles of ink rattled and brushed between them. Andros pursed his lips before pushing himself into their conversation.
"Ladies,"
he started, continuing before either could respond.
"Silverwing Avalon, we have quite the trip to this Woad Hollow. I would believe now is as good as any time to discuss the training you are giving our white wings."
He pulled out a leather-bound journal from his saddlebag. Licking his thumb, he flipped past several heavily written pages, settling on a fresh one.
"I've interviewed several of your trainees, as well as your more seasoned men and women. I have to admit, I am more disturbed than interested in what you have been filling their minds with. However, any attempts to speak to leadership, such as yourself, has been difficult."
"You're right, my Goldwing," sighed Avalon. "I've been preoccupied with other matters. I've dug heavy into my work, and your visit really has been a lower priority. Now, with this Woad Hollow mystery, I suggest you treat me as much of a priority as ridding this village of this possible infestation," jeered Andros. He paused briefly. "I still have a question that needs your attention. You may have Red Wing Savine sold on the idea of using the Assassin's Choice blade as a silencer, as opposed to the traditional claymore, but I would like an explanation to this disconcerting fact."
"A Ninjato-designed silencer is quicker, lighter, and more balanced than the brute force of the claymore silencers,"
proudly explained Veda.
"We are training our silent ones to rely on subtlety and cunning for their tactics, instead of intimidation and strength."
Andros had taken out a pen and scribbled down Veda's dictation. He murmured each of her words slowly before looking towards Avalon.
"Would you like to add anything, Silverwing?"
Taken aback and still unprepared for the impromptu interview, Avalon fumbled for her words.
Yes. You see, the night is like a horde, disorganized, led only by the strongest of their kind, though they possess no loyalty and follow for their own personal gain. They can't be stopped by our traditional means, only slowed down. They don't respond to our nature. They will brush us off and come back with 10 times the savagery." She recovered her composure, responding with the sharp answer. The Black Rabbits were villainous, chaotic, and had tainted her in the past, but their teachings provided an advantage for her silent ones. Judeoheim could send 10,000 Androsses. None would stand in her way. "And changing our type of swords? That's your answer?"
Andros responded snidely. "A silent one must match ruthlessness with ruthlessness. It is what the night only knows," Avalon said grimly.
"Exactly how far do you plan on taking this?"
asked Andros, attempting to search Avalon's eyes for an answer he already knew.
"Until the night buckles and breaks," answered Avalon.
"We are not vengeful, Avalon. We slay for justice. We protect those that cannot protect themselves. We act for her, the angel of righteousness." "Let's not forget this," lectured Andros. "Your words lack these values. You lead with malice within your soul," he continued.
"My soul was blackened by my 12th birthday, and I lost it before my 20th.
Judeo would return your soul. Had you ever wanted to save it? Andros almost sneered.
Judeo cannot return what she does not have. The rabbit sacrificed my soul to the ash-winged angel long before Judeo gained my servitude.
Avalon glared at Andros.
You lecture me about justice and righteous heroics? Judeo struck down her first demon in hatred, not to save mankind, but to punish those that wronged her.
Judeo rose to heavens for her selfless deeds. She became the mortal goddess because she chose the immortal light over the unforgiving darkness. Andros argued, You, of all people, should understand our scripture.
You carry a silencer, Goldwing, but you are not a silent one.
I beg your pardon, scoffed Andros, clearly flustered by Avalon's jab.
We are not the law. We are not of the cloth. We are the executioners. Our holy symbol is not a book, but a sword. Why is that?
Asked Avalon. She did not let the man answer.
Because you read a book. You kill with a sword. Judeo was a hero to mankind, but she was also a ruthless killer to her enemies. It is why she is so revered. She earned that reverence through her strength and cunning.
This is what you are teaching our students? Savagery and being a blackguard? You think so little of Judeo that you twisted her lore to fit your demented teachings? Avalon moved in close to Andros.
Woad Hollow was my home. Trust me when I say this. I seek no justice for this, for justice can only be granted consensuously, ethically, in a civilized manner.
Avalon's words could slice open Andros's throat.
This is personal.
Andros shook his head. I think it best if you... Enough, interrupted Avalon. The caravan halted before a tree line. Black, suffering, alien, and unnatural. All how the range patrol described it. A frightening sight that would ward off any normal soul. Even the silent ones themselves were hesitant to enter. Their horse whinnied and fought to keep from entering the forsaken woods.
What manner of unholy magic is this?
Uttered Andros.
We're here to find that out,
responded Avalon. 6. Dragon Realm Scorch. Guster exited the harsh desert winds and burning sun and stepped into the cool, dark, spotted jackal cantina. He wiped his brow, making a beeline for the bar. Smacking his dried lips, he slid a Sendeti coin to the barkeep.
Ale and water.
His voice was hoarse like sandpaper, coming out more like a cough than his normal rugged sound that the barkeep was used to.
Make sure it has that chill rune on the mug this time.
Well, well, Guster LaRue. Guster sneered, shaking his head in annoyance. He turned around, finding his attention drawn to a woman tipping her cowboy hat. She was similarly dressed like Guster, sporting a long duster, but with white leather opposed to his brown. She grinned, moving a strand of her auburn hair away from her face.
What rock did you slither from underneath?
Her smile vanished.
My, you stink. Why don't you use that water to bathe with?
Guster chuckled. He removed his hat and placed it innocently on his chest.
Siv, a pleasure to see you too. It's been a month now, right?
A month. Not long enough. 3 months would be too short before seeing your dog face again.
Guster paused. He hid his agitation with a sly grin.
I ought to be going. Network business awaits.
Guster reached for his glass of ale, leaving the water behind, and strolled to the darker end of the bar. Pushing a door open, he swung a single gulp of his alcohol before smashing the rest against the neighboring wall. Siv always got the best of him, like a chigger under his skin, itching, crawling, gnawing in his head. He couldn't stand her.
Ah, Siv, what happened to you, girl? You and I used to be friends. Back when we ran together, we were untouchable. How come you turned out to be such a bitch?
The hallway bent into a wrapping stairwell before ending in a thick steel door with a peek hole. Guster rapped 3 times, pausing before knocking a 4th. The peek hole slid open. A set of eyes took a short glimpse at Guster before a set of locks chinked behind the door, and the entrance creaked open. Inside, Guster walked and sat down on a stool, a low table set between him with a lanky and scraggly man at the other end. He wore a leather skullcap, accented with a set of dingy, bronze goggles. His breath reeked of cigarettes, and he wiggled his skinny fingers before tossing a copper chip to Guster. The coin bounced once before Guster slapped his hand down, catching it in mid-motion.
Lord Brinshaw's brat ran away from home, making a mess for the nobleman. He wants you to bring him home.
Guster narrowed his eyes and slid the chip back to the man. Chump change, Dozer. Rookie's work, he scoffed. I want what Civ has. I know the network has been treating me like dirt since I left her partnership. Dozer sucked in deep through his yellow-stained teeth.
Well, LaRue, the truth is, we feel you haven't proved yourself as a solo act.
Proved myself? Guster kicked his stool from beneath him. I ran with my old man learning the ropes years before I met Civ, and me and her were the legendary knife and needle crew. I got more experience in this game than all your bounty hunters combined. Well, I ain't finished yet, raged Guster. His face fumed red as he paced around the room, rattling off his resume. We took on the biggest bounties during the War of Chains, white cloaks, gladiators, even slavers. Ain't no one give us the slip.
Sit down.
Dozer waited for Guster to calm down before the bounty hunter once again took his seat. The director flipped a different chip into Guster's hands. This one was marked with a shallow groove signifying that a bounty hunter had taken the challenge already. It was not uncommon for multiple bounty hunters to be on the same job at once. Healthy competition was often encouraged within the network, although it also led to unwanted murders and career-ending injuries.
You want to compete with Civ? Don't let it get out of hand, warned Dozer. Lady Sheena is looking to put Uther Ironsoul in her collection. Normally this would be a job for a slaver, but...
Guster rolled the chip down his knuckles before squeezing it. The Iron Soul? He's dead, though. He cocked his head with curiosity. Saw him go down with my own eyes.
If you don't want the job...
Dozer reached out his hand. Guster pulled back the chip. How much is the bounty?
30,000 Sendetti.
Guster let out a long whistle. And Civ is on this one? He caught the director's nod. Then I'm on this one, too. Flicking the chip into the air, Guster snatched it on its way back down. To prove myself and junk. 7. Dragon Realm Cyprus. The investigator scoured the vile goat from the ceiling to the floorboards, searching every nook and mousehole for evidence pointing to more revelations on the creation of the coup. Wicker leaned against the wall, overseeing the hunt. Whoever supplied their funding remained a mystery, but their motive was now uncovered, and it deeply troubled Wicker. Netchell's words echoed within his mind. With his own deteriorating state, the coup's cause struck close to home.
They were one step away from becoming the next Black Rabbits, and any of us might have joined them.
What have we found? Ellicard appeared within the destroyed entrance of the tavern. The elf propped up an overturned chair to sit down in and lowered his mask and hood, revealing his tired face. Like Wicker, the prospects of a coup besieging the city left the Watchers many sleepless nights. Wicker gestured his sergeant to follow him down the cellar. Tell me something interesting, Wicker, said Ellicard, lowering his head to avoid a crossbeam.
I've been here all morning with the investigators. Down in the cellar behind several barrels of vegetables, we found a false wall.
That is interesting.
You don't know the half of it.
Wicker could barely contain his excitement. The two stepped forth on the cool floor of the basement to the sight of several soldiers organizing and reading through a jungle of paper stacks. A stout man with large sideburns looked up from the pile of scattered papers only to shrug. There's something here, Captain. We're just not sure what. Wicker smiled back to Ellicard before bending over the soldier's shoulder.
Perhaps I can shine some light on it, Omeric.
Omeric motioned to a neat pile of documents. The terrorists have made a habit of recording their businesses with some Yakati. At first we thought the Yakati was some high or first blade from a local assassin clan. Wicker scanned the papers mentioning the Yakati. No name, only descriptions of him carrying several swords and always with a masked figure at his side. He let Omeric continue. Long Whisper has seen its share of clans pop up after the downfall of the rabbits, but never does it seem to mention a clan here. There were 23 arrests last night. All were accounted for as former soldiers enlisted during the Varus War, piped up Ellicard. None has ties with assassin clans. I doubt these men would sink to accepting funds from murderers, especially after risking their lives to fend off the Black Rabbits during the war. Right. That's why we don't think the Yakati is involved with any one particular clan. Wicker peeked above the brim of the paper, his face transfixed with curiosity and a dab of concern. But you still think there is a clan at work here? Sir, the papers imply something. Omeric snatched a paper from a steadily teetering tower of files. Listen to this one. Year 1457, the 10th moon, the 3rd sun. Tomorrow night will be the 3rd meeting with the Panther Yakati. I have decided that we should accept his offer to fund our project. None of us own land, and none of us could afford our operation without his help. The Yakati, which was to ask no questions from him or where his funds came from. I believe our cause is too delicate to become involved with a shadow organization, but I have always been known to be easily enticed. Bremscott. Wicker shuffled through more papers from the pile that the journal entry was pulled from. Bremscott has already been caught and interrogated. It's how we learned about the vile goat, but he made no mention of secret meetings with a cat. I need to learn about this 3rd meeting. Wicker stopped abruptly as he came across the entry he sought out. Year 1457, the 10th moon, the 4th sun. I returned pale as a ghost. I saw Alana, and she was the entertainer. I told the Yakati we would accept the funding with the accompanying answers to our questions. Who were they? Who did they work for? What was their cause? I know we were instructed not to ask questions, but how could I not? The Yakati humored my wishes to an extent. He explained he was a collector, and his associate was an entertainer. They were part of an organization that had an interest in public affairs such as our plight. The answers would suffice my men, but not myself. I told them we planned to overthrow the Dawn Edge crown and install a new government. If the Yakati had ties to a neighboring nation, I would need to know. The cat did not look pleased, but it was the entertainer I feared the most. He was faster than any warrior I've trained with. He pulled an elven assassin blade from his cloak. I am a large fellow, but even I cowered within the clown's shadow. Needless to say, I was given the ultimatum of dying or taking their funds. Since I am here and recount the tale, we have a sponsor for our movement now. I hope I have made my bed with an ally. Bremscott. Wicker's grip nearly tore the document. Faster than any warrior I've trained with. Elven assassin blade. Ellicard's thoughts trailed out loud. Within the clown's shadow. Wicker finished Ellicard's train of thought. Inlay has returned. 8. Dragon Realm Cypress. Inlay Ebonpath relaxed on top of the elevated clock tower in the center of Lost Dawns. The air breezed through his violet hair as he gripped his steel clown mask close to his chest, watching a pair of red-clad elves training in the distance. Ellicard and his new student, Kaizo. Inlay had spent a considerable amount of time spying on Ellicard, getting close to his life, the life he was no longer a part of. Seeing Ellicard so quickly pick up a new student flustered Inlay. The fact that this new brother of his had Ellicard's attention while Inlay remained exiled was more than his heavy heart could bear. Inlay looked over his shoulder. It seems you always know where to find me, collector. He sighed as a figure stepped out of a shadowy portal behind him. The black-furred Yakati, his cat ears jingling with jewelry and trinkets and missing a whisker or two, narrowed his eyes as he sneered, exposing his crooked fangs. He unbuckled his heavy belt, bearing 4 different swords, and placed them on the ground before sitting next to Inlay. You are never hard to find, my student. Inlay rubbed his mask, his mind still trapped in solace. His memories wandered from his childhood to his life as a black rabbit, to losing everything he worked towards.
Our plans for Lost Dawns have failed, but here I still find you spying on Ellicard, the Yakati said. Why do you waste our time dealing with him? Our time? Inlay sat up with a violent jerk. I am my own elf, ordained to be the new Silent Master. What I do with my time is none of your business, cat. A twisted laugh wheezed out of his partner. Forgive me, my Silent Master. I have overstepped my boundaries. His tone writhed with mockery. Inlay stepped out towards the edge of the clock tower, sliding on his mask. Like or not, we've been assigned as partners, cat, spat Inlay. Master Raistlin and the rest of the council chose me to pick up where Raijin failed. It would do you some good to show me a little respect. The council may have voted for you, but I did not. The Yakati slowly moved to beside Inlay, as a lion would inch toward its prey. Until you've sworn your loyalties with my master, I shall not. With a stiff arm, the collector grabbed Inlay's collar and shoved the elf off the ledge of the tower. Inlay made a sharp yelp as he flailed for his life, only to find himself dangling by the collar of his cloak. The dark linen material tightened and rubbed deep in his throat as he gagged, trying to call for help. Allow you to think of yourself as my equal, finished the Yakati with a long hiss. Where do your loyalties lie? Yourself or my guild? Inlay desperately clawed the cloak as the cape dug deeper into his skin, rubbing it raw. Well, the cat loosened his grip. My arm tires, elf. The guild! Gasped Inlay. The very act of speaking while in utter terror of being dropped overrode the need to use the time to suck in air. I don't believe you. You are a sociopathic insect, only out to further your own obsessions, the collector roared. Guild? Inlay gasped out once more, his eyes now bulged and shifted pink. The Yakati's murderous face morphed into a playful smile. He pulled up the shivering young elf, who collapsed at the cat's feet. I still don't believe you. Guild, please, please. Sniveling Inlay forced a series of dry coughs. No. The Yakati fastened his swords back to his waist. But there is time to win my vote just yet, dear Inlay. You and I have much work to do. Come, we must find another way to burn this city to the ground. Any ideas? Inlay rubbed the sore marks on his neck. Unsure whether the collector was back in good spirits, he decided to keep his ego in check. There are other veterans, he croaked. His labored voice ached, but he was still determined not to be further humiliated. Let us find more, and see if we can't send them into a frenzy. The collector rubbed a claw over his upper lip. Yes, if there are still roses, there will still be bees. Let us shake a hive and see who comes out.